If there's one sound that can ruin a perfectly good afternoon, it's that low, lazy buzz circling your head while you're trying to eat lunch on the porch. Flies don't just annoy you, they land on garbage, then they land on your sandwich, tracking bacteria like E. coli and salmonella from one to the other on those sticky little feet. And here's the part most people don't realize. By the time you're swatting at adults, dozens more are already hatching nearby. The good news? You can wipe out an entire summer's worth of flies with a 5-gallon bucket and a few things you already have in your kitchen. No poison, no expensive gadgets, just a stinky, brutally effective trap that does the dirty work for you. So grab a bucket and let's build it. First, why a bucket beats everything else. You've probably seen the soda bottle traps all over the internet. Cut the top off a 2-liter, flip it upside down, drop in some bait. They work fine for a kitchen counter and a handful of fruit flies. But if you've got a real fly problem, the kind that comes with a dog run, a compost pile, a chicken coop, or just a hot, humid backyard, a tiny bottle fills up in a day and quits. A 5-gallon bucket changes the math entirely. It holds a massive amount of bait. It catches flies by the thousands instead of the dozens. And you only have to deal with it every couple of weeks instead of every couple of days. One man in Alberta built a bucket version on his property and described it perfectly. He said the moment he set it out, the flies got busy so fast it was like he'd kicked a wasp nest. By the end of summer, the bottom of his bucket held more than a foot of solid flies and maggots. That's the kind of volume we're after. So let's walk through exactly how to build one, bait it, place it, and keep it running all season. Number 1. Gather your cheap, simple materials. The beauty of this project is that the ingredients list is almost laughably basic. You'll need a 5-gallon bucket with a lid, the kind you can grab at any hardware store or one you've already got rattling around the garage. You'll need a drill or a sharp utility knife to make the entry holes. You'll need water, a few drops of dish soap, and your bait of choice, which we'll get into in detail. That's really it. The whole point of a DIY trap is that you're not driving to the store to buy traps or bait. You're repurposing junk you'd otherwise throw away. A scrap of window screen or some mesh is a nice optional add-on, and a short length of wire or string is handy if you want to hang the trap. But at its core, this is a bucket, some holes, water, and stink. Total cost? Often zero. Number 2, understand why it actually works. Before you start drilling, it helps to know what you're exploiting, because that's what separates a trap that overflows with flies from one that sits there empty. Flies hunt almost entirely by smell. They've got an incredibly sensitive sense of smell tuned to one thing above all: decay. Rotting meat, fermenting fruit, sour garbage. To a fly, those odors aren't disgusting. They're a dinner bell and a maternity ward rolled into one. Female flies aren't just looking for a meal. They're looking for a place to lay eggs, and rotting organic matter is the perfect nursery. There's also a sneaky bit of chemistry working in your favor. When sugary or fruity bait ferments, it releases carbon dioxide as a byproduct. For years, scientists thought flies avoided carbon dioxide. But research out of Caltech, spanning 6 years and thousands of experiments, flipped that idea on its head. They found that once a fly is airborne and hunting, carbon dioxide actually attracts it. Because in nature, a plume of carbon dioxide usually means fermenting. Sugar-rich food is nearby. That's the same reason fruit flies appear out of nowhere the second you crack open a beer outdoors. Your trap is basically broadcasting that signal across the yard. So the trap works in both stages. The smell and the carbon dioxide pull flies in from a distance, and then the design makes sure they can crawl in but can't find their way back out. Get both halves right, and the bucket does the rest. Number 3, drill the entry holes. This is the one step where a little care pays off big. Flies are far better at finding their way into a small opening than back out of one. So you want entry points that are easy to crawl through, but confusing to escape from. There are 2 ways to do this. The simplest is to drill a ring of holes around the upper sides of the bucket, just below the lid, each one roughly the diameter of a pencil. That's the sweet spot. Too big, and flies stroll right back out. Too small, and they won't bother going in. A dozen or so holes spaced around the bucket gives plenty of entry points without turning it into an open door. The more advanced version mimics the funnel design that makes commercial traps so deadly. You cut a hole in the lid and fit a funnel into it, narrow end pointing down into the bucket. Flies follow the smell down through the wide opening, drop into the bucket, and then can't figure out how to climb back up through that little hole. A plastic funnel works, or you can roll a cone out of stiff cardstock. Either way, leave a gap between the bottom of the funnel and the liquid below, so the bait keeps stinking and the flies keep falling. Number 4. Add water and a few drops of dish soap. Pour a few inches of water into the bottom of the bucket. This is where the flies are going to end up, so you want enough to drown them, but not so much that it splashes up into the funnel. Now here's the trick that turns a so-so trap into a kill box. Add a few drops of liquid dish soap and give it a gentle stir. Plain water is actually hard for a fly to drown in. The surface tension is strong enough that a light insect can land on it, sit on top, take a breather, and fly off. Dish soap breaks that surface tension. The moment a fly touches treated water, the surface gives way and it sinks instead of floating. Insects aren't built to repel oil and surfactants the way they repel water, so the soap basically pulls them under. It's a small thing, but it's the difference between a trap full of drowned flies and a trap full of flies sitting on the water having a nice rest. Number 5. Pick your bait. Part 1. The protein route. Here's a truth that surprises a lot of people. When folks test different fly traps side by side, the design barely matters. The bait is what makes or breaks the whole thing. You can build the fanciest trap in the world, and if the bait's wrong, you'll catch nothing. For the big outdoor flies, blowflies, those metallic green and blue bottle flies, and the larger filth flies that swarm trash and animal waste, nothing beats rotting protein. We're talking raw meat or fish scraps. A single raw shrimp left to bake in the sun is hands down one of the most effective fly baits there is. It's grotesque, sure. Within a couple of days, it smells like something died, which is exactly the point. Those flies are drawn to decomposing protein because that's where they instinctively lay their eggs. So if your fly problem is the heavy-duty outdoor kind, drop a chunk of cheap raw meat, fish, or a shrimp into the water at the bottom. Fair warning, it's going to get foul, but foul is what fills the bucket. Number 6, pick your bait. Part 2, the sweet and fermented route. Not every fly is hunting for rotting flesh. House flies and fruit flies lean toward the sweet and the fermented, mimicking overripe fruit, sugary spills, and booze. For these, you've got a whole pantry of options. Sugar water is a classic. The sweetness imitates natural nectar and pulls in a wide range of flies. Vinegar, especially apple cider vinegar, is the go-to for fruit flies because that sharp fermented tang is exactly what they associate with rotting fruit. Overripe bananas, strawberries, or any fruit that's gone soft and brown work beautifully. And a splash of beer or cheap wine is shockingly good because the fermentation is already done for you and the carbon dioxide is already wafting out. A great all-purpose mix is a little sugar, a glug of vinegar, some mashed overripe fruit, and water with that dish soap stirred in. If your flies are the smaller house and fruit fly variety, this sweet and sour cocktail will outperform raw meat every time. And if you're dealing with a mix of everything, run 2 buckets, 1 protein, 1 sweet. Let the flies sort themselves. Number 7, supercharge it with yeast and sugar. Want to crank the attraction up a notch? Give your bait an engine. Mix warm water, sugar, and a packet of active yeast in the bottom of the bucket, As the yeast feeds on the sugar, it ferments, and fermentation pumps out a steady stream of carbon dioxide. Remember that carbon dioxide plume is one of the strongest long-range food here signals a flying insect can pick up. It's the same chemistry that makes flies and mosquitoes home in on a fermenting source from across a yard. A yeast and sugar brew turns your bucket from a passive smelly thing into an active beacon, breathing out carbon dioxide hour after hour. It eventually loses steam as the yeast burns through the sugar, so this is a booster you'll want to refresh. But for sheer pulling power in the early going, it's hard to beat. Number 8. Seal it up and set it out. Now assemble the whole thing. Snap the lid on tight if you went the funnel route, or just make sure your side holes are clear and your bait is in place. The seal matters more than you'd think. It forces flies to come and go through your designated entry points instead of wandering in and out wherever they please, and it keeps larger animals and curious pets from knocking the thing over. There's a bonus built into the design too. That trap is going to smell so aggressively bad that animals won't want anything to do with it. The Alberta builder pointed this out himself. The stench is so foul that raccoons, dogs, and other critters leave it completely alone. The thing that makes it disgusting to you is the same thing that protects it from being tipped over. Number 9, placement. Put it far from where you live. This is the single most common mistake people make, and it's a big one. Your instinct is to put the trap right where the flies are bugging you, next to the patio table, by the back door, near the grill. Don't. A working trap is a fly magnet. You are deliberately broadcasting "come and get it" to every fly in the neighborhood. If you set it next to where you sit, you're inviting the whole party to land right beside you on the way in. Instead, place the trap well away from your gathering spots, out by the back fence, near the compost, at the far edge of the yard, downwind if you can manage it. The goal is to pull flies away from your living space, not draw a fresh crowd toward it. Think of the bucket as a decoy positioned at the far end of the property, luring the swarm in the opposite direction from your dinner. Number 10. Placement. Use the sun and get it off the ground. 2 more placement tricks make a real difference. First, sun. Heat accelerates everything you want. It speeds up the rot, intensifies the smell, and ramps up fermentation and carbon dioxide output. A trap baking in direct sun will catch more flies than one sitting in the shade, sometimes dramatically. Flies are also drawn toward light and warmth, so a sunny spot pulls double duty. Second, height. Hanging the trap or setting it up on a post rather than leaving it flat on the ground helps in a couple of ways. It keeps the worst of the smell above nose level for anyone walking by, and it puts the trap closer to where flies are actually cruising. A bit of wire or string through a couple of holes near the rim lets you hang it from a fence post, a tree branch, or a shepherd's hook. Just brace yourself. If a downward breeze catches you standing under it, the smell can be, let's say, assertive. Number 11. Time it right. Strike before they multiply. Here's a tip that quietly does more than any single bait choice. Get your trap out early. Flies are enthusiastic breeders, and a single fly you catch in spring represents hundreds you will not have to deal with in July. The best time to control a pest is before you even see the pest. If you set your bucket out a few days before the first real warm stretch, before the flies have settled in and started mating, you knock the population down from day one and never let it build to a swarm. Wait until your yard is already buzzing and you're playing catch-up against generations that are reproducing faster than you can trap them. Get ahead of it, and the same trap does a fraction of the work for a fraction of the misery. Bait early, bait often, win the season before it starts. Number 12. Keep it fresh and watch the water line. A trap is only as good as its smell, and smell fades. As bait dries out, gets diluted by rain, or simply gets crowded out by a layer of dead flies, it stops pulling. Plan to refresh things every few days to a week, depending on heat and how fast you're filling up. Refreshing doesn't mean dumping the whole thing each time. Top off the water. If it's evaporated, add a bit of new bait to revive the scent, and keep an eye on that drowning pool. Interestingly, a pack trap doesn't necessarily quit working. Once it's loaded with dead flies, the mass of them keeps right on attracting more. But there's a point of diminishing returns where it's so full there's no room left to catch anything, and that's your cue to deal with it. A clear sight gauge, even just a strip where you can peek at the level, helps you know when it's getting full without having to open it up and inhale. Number 13, cut off the competition. Your trap competes with every other smelly thing in your yard, so help it win by removing its rivals. Patricia Zangoli, an entomologist at Clemson University, put it bluntly: the more hiding places and food sources you leave around, the more pests your property can support. Flies can thrive on garbage, pet waste, overripe fruit, dirty drains, and even plain standing water with a little organic gunk in it. Every one of those is a competing attraction, drawing flies away from your bucket, and worse, giving them somewhere to breed. So before you rely on the trap, take out the trash regularly and keep the can sealed. Clean up after pets, toss overripe produce, wipe up sugary spills, and dump out standing water. The cleaner the surrounding area, the more irresistible your bucket becomes by comparison. You're not just trapping flies, you're making your trap the only good option in town. Number 14, dispose of it without losing your lunch. Let's be honest about the part nobody enjoys. Eventually, your bucket is going to be a churning soup of dead flies. And yes, maggots. Trapped females lay eggs in there, and those eggs hatch. It's completely normal. It's also deeply unpleasant. When it's time to dispose of it, the move is simple. Seal the lid, hold your breath, and get it out fast. You can bag the whole mess and toss it, or if you're emptying a reusable bucket to run it again, pour it out somewhere far from the house and downwind, never near your gathering areas, for obvious reasons. Some people just retire a cheap bucket entirely at season's end rather than ever cleaning it. Whatever you choose, do it on a day with a breeze, and maybe with the garden hose handy. This is the toll you pay for catching flies by the thousands. It's worth it. Number 15, scale up and experiment. Once you've seen one bucket work, the natural move is to run more of them. If you've got a big property, a few traps positioned around the perimeter will outperform a single one every time, forming a kind of stinky perimeter fence that intercepts flies before they ever reach the center. You can also experiment with bait, depending on what's bugging you. Got blowflies around the dog run? Go heavy on raw protein near there. Fruit flies near the compost? A vinegar and fruit bucket close by. Mosquitoes and gnats in the mix? The yeast and carbon dioxide brew helps there too. Treat your first bucket as a prototype. Notice which bait fills up fastest, where the flies are thickest, and which spots in your yard pull the biggest crowds. Then build around what you learn. The materials are basically free, so there's no reason not to fine-tune until your yard goes quiet. That's the whole playbook. A 5-gallon bucket, a few holes, some water with a drop of dish soap, and the foulest bait you can stomach, placed in the sun, far from your patio, set out early in the season. Cheap to build, brutal in its results, and powered entirely by the fly's own instincts working against it. So before you spend another dime on sprays and gadgets that barely dent the problem, give the bucket trap a shot. Your sandwich will thank you. Thanks for watching. If this gave you a few useful tricks, Give it a like and share it with anyone fighting the same buzzing battle. It helps us keep making videos like this one. And if you want more, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next.